Hello and welcome to Keeping Her Keys. Whether you're joining us for the very first time or you're here with us, starting a new season of exploring Hekate and her witchcraft and personal development, healing, and transformation, we welcome you. We are coming to you from the Temple of Good Enough. Not only are we coming to you from the Temple of Good Enough, but we are inviting you into the Temple of Good Enough with us. And like all temples in mystery traditions, ours has a secret verse that you need to recite to join us. And it is this: I am good, I am enough, I abide in the temple of good enough. And we keep our keys, our own keys. There is so much in the world today that puts pressure on us to fall into the trap, which is truly in the realm of the shadow, this trap of perfectionism. And that can paralyze us so that we don't do the things that bring us meaning and connection, like our witchcraft, our rituals, our devotional acts, because we think things have to be perfect. And in the temple of good enough, we don't strive for perfection, we strive for wholeness. And I want that, like, I just want to broadcast this message throughout the witch world, that the temple of good enough, like, we have capacities. We may be infinite beings on the deeper plane, but in the physical world, we have limits. We have demands on our time. We have physical abilities. We have psychological considerations. We have family obligations. We got the things. We're not all dwelling in a cave with a bank account that has 9 figures in it, that we can just do everything all the time and be the perfect social media sort of Hecatean witch. Like, that's not realistic. And I think that veers into toxic positivity. And it reminds me of some of that stuff. Do y'all remember, like, back in the 2000s, when a certain someone, she was really preaching the dogma of you can do anything, you can be anybody, answer your calling, you can achieve great, you can achieve all these things, which I think in one sense, I think that's a good message. But I remember even back then, but I was like, but within what you're capable of and within what you are called to do in this life, like, it's not, we all can't be the super duper swamp witch who also has an unlimited bank account. So I just want you to come into the temple of good enough with us, hang out here. We're going to light our candles. So if you've got a candle handy, we invite you to ignite the sacred flame with us as we do our simple, very good enough ritual. Because as we all know, intention and energy are everything. And as much as we love our candles and all of our magical things, it is our will that really makes all the difference in witchcraft, and will don't cost a dime. So let's start by cleansing the space with that counterclockwise motion, just releasing anything that you want to let go of. I really am looking forward to releasing the rest of this cold. And now let's cast the protective and connective circle around us clockwise. Just aligning us here in the temple of good enough to each other, we freely share here in our temple what we know, what we don't know, and just to being real with each other as we, of course, hail our beloved Hekate, other goddesses, and all the spirits and the plants and the stones and the animals, all of our wonderful companions as we walk this very crooked path. We thought we would begin with a reading of a witch's prayer, the witch's prayer to Hekate, from the Keeping Her Keys book. Mighty Hekate, queen of the witches, Blessed am I to call myself one of your chosen. Mighty Hekate, queen of the witches, you are both the dark and the light. You are the way, and you are the light along it. My queen, holder of the keys of all creation. Mighty Hekate, queen of the witches, I stand before you, we stand before you, in this liminal space that you created for us, alone, but also together. Here in this place of the in-between, I feel the energy of the world. I see the vision of the future. I hold the wisdom of the past.
Mighty Hekate, queen of the witches, you have bestowed upon me the power of the witch. Through the gifts of your sacred keys, I'm the walker between worlds, the spinner of the web of fate, the knower of your secrets, the student of your mysteries, the giver of your healing.
Mighty Hekate, queen of the witches, my journey is a blessed one. Each key you give me unlocks great power. Grateful I am for all of your keys. The key of acceptance for that which I cannot change, the key of courage to overcome adversity, the key of kindness for myself and others, the key of pain through which I discovered my own strength, the key of suffering in which I have found healing, the key of peace that brings me contentment, the key of wisdom so that I may live a life of truth.
Mighty Hekate, queen of the witches, our witch's journey is a blessing. Through the darkness of the underworld, up to the heights of the heavens and the balance of everyday life. Through all situations, we honor you. In all ways, we honor you. For all of time, eternal queen, we honor you.
Hail Hekate.
Hail Hekate.
Hail Hekate.
So in the spirit of being authentic here in our Temple of Good Enough, there is a typo in this poem. And I mean, the four of us have talked about it before. It's caused me a great deal of embarrassment. And also, since it's Temple of Good Enouging, it also has a little bit of magic for me, you know, in that kind of a key of imperfection, you know, that, you know, Brené Brown wrote The Gifts of Imperfection, which is such a phenomenal work, and she's such an amazing researcher. But I think of that little extra Y in that poem, which has no place being there. I don't know how it got there, as a little bit of magic that just says you are not meant to be perfect. You are meant to be whole. And of course, I'm paraphrasing that from the amazing Jane Fonda, who, you know, that saying is often credited to her. So since we're launching a new season, especially after last season, when y'all really became like wish fulfillers, like I thought I wanted the podcast to be, you know, this amazing group of witches that we talked about real things that were important to us in all areas of our lives, whether it's making spells or our identities or, you know, how to heal from trauma. And we really, like the four of us really started to come together through the pod last year. And I know we had some guests on the pod last year and they were fabulous, but I'm like, this year I want it to kind of just be us. And also we're going to be bringing in some other of the members of the Mistai, which is the guides who help us with Covina, the coven, the online coven. So I don't know. I'm just like, this is exactly what I wanted it to be. I am happy. I don't know. Do y'all ever have moments like that when you're like, Hekate gave me this vision of this thing, and now the thing is happening and life is good. No matter what else is going on, I feel like I am aligned to my purpose. Even though it is very messy here in the Temple of Good Enough, and everything is always crooked, and sometimes I put my shirt on backwards. But I feel like I'm aligned to my purpose. I don't know, Christen, does that make sense?
That makes so much sense. And I'm just thinking about, for me, like imperfection in a lot of ways is authenticity, right? And that I think there's just so much medicine in like being yourself and being unique. I mean, not just like through your own experiences, but through others witnessing your experiences and who you are, right? There's beauty in the imperfections.
There's so much beauty in imperfection. I just think that's so powerful what you just said. And allowing others to witness our true selves. I mean, of course, when it's safe, right? Because it's not always safe.
Right.
But here in the Temple of Good Enough, if you're sharing in this conversation with us, you can email me and connect and share your experiences. I love it when you do. And we often are very inspired by the emails that come in what we talk about on the pod. But this whole thing about beauty and imperfection, and I don't know, I just kind of want to share that. The world is really rough right now, like politically, climate change. Like, I mean, climate change is just like slapping us in the face, isn't it?
Mhm.
And, all of these things that are happening in the world. And just, yeah, to be imperfectly whole and beautiful.
Mm.
So Liz, as the queen, the high priestess of stones and other assorted spirits.
Yes.
So Liz is also, for me, my often go-to reliable source when I am like, oh, what the is happening in the world? Liz is an informed human being and witch.
Sometimes. I won't claim to be always informed, but I do try to keep myself base level informed.
Base level informed, because I need
Yeah.
to know things once in a while. Like, how do you, and like, you own multiple businesses. So you've got Materia Magica, and then you've
Mhm.
got your beautiful thread business as well. So
Yeah, Stitchy Box. Yeah.
so you are out in the world all the time, working with customers, doing all these things. So not just like you're politically informed, but you're also like
Of the world.
of
I
the
am very
world.
much the middle world person, I think, in this group. Like
I think that's a good way to put it. You're the middle world person.
yeah. So I think for me it's about like finding small moments to appreciate my witchiness. I can't always rarely spend more than maybe half an hour doing something for me because I've got too much to do for other people, which is a choice that I've made, right? Like we all make choices in our lives. And, honestly, part of my devotional practice is actually doing my businesses. It is the work I do for my businesses, because I think in a lot of ways it provides like, I don't want to sound like I'm on a high horse, but I think I provide a service that makes people's lives a little bit prettier, a little bit better. And I think there's value in that. And so for me, doing a good job at that is part of my devotional practice. But when I try to eke out a corner for myself, I so often fall into the trap of, oh my God, I don't have the time to do this the way I want to do it. So am I going to do it at all? Right? Like I don't have the time to set up the beautiful altar and prepare all the things perfectly. And over the years, I've just had to accept that, like, something you said earlier, it was kind of just a ping line, but the intention is the thing, right? Like the beautiful bits around the practice or the devotion or the spell, they help, but the intention is the key. So if my intention is there and the spell looks a little wonky or the altar looks a little wonky, then that's just the way it was meant to be. And that's the way it is. You can't do everything, but you can try to do your best. And that's where it kind of landed.
I think that's so true. And I really value like your approach to witchcraft. Like, I'm thinking about your spell of the year and how you went about that, which is a really unique take on it and something I would never think of. So I learned a lot, from
Do you
what
want me
you
to
did.
tell people what it was?
Yes, I was trying. I wasn't gonna say it in case you didn't want to share what it is, but I think it's like we need to, like, this is an amazing spell technique.
So as we mentioned, my other business is Stitchy Box. It's a thread business. And I cross stitch for models, and I skein up thread. And so what I did is I saved clippings from all of the skeining of the thread. So taking the large hanks and making them into the things that I sell. I saved all that because that's time, right? That's time me working through the business. That's me doing my work. And those clippings were the basis of my spell for this year, because there's so much of my own energy and kind of the type of energy that I wanted to bring into that spell of doing the work and being committed and kind of sticking with the thing. Yeah, so that's the base. If you want to see it, I can actually show it to you because it's sitting right next to me.
Oh yeah,
I
show
don't
us.
mind
We have
showing
to.
it.
So if you are just listening, you won't be able to see it, but that's fine.
So
we'll be
I
able
will
to see it.
describe it to you. So it's a mason jar, and all the bits in here are the end pieces from different skeins that I made over the year. And it's actually kind of a common practice for stitchers to keep, like, we call them orts. It's just the term. The little ratty bits of thread at the end of a project, and people make ornaments out of them or whatever. So this is kind of a witchy way to use those orts. And then I just put some stones. I've got like my actual spell paper. And then this just sits on my altar, and that's my spell of the year. So
I love that. I keep my spell of the year close to me too. I think we're doing in Covina this year. That's Capricorn new moon, I think.
that sounds right. It's usually in that region somewhere. Yeah.
So we're doing them in conjunction with the Wheel of the Year. So I don't know. I'm really looking forward to the spell of the year. I'm starting to think about it already. So what else have we been up to? I'm just thinking, like, I'm looking around the Temple of Good Enough, and like, what else can we share with them in the little bit of time we've got left for today? May, I don't know. You're looking around inside the Temple of Good Enough too. What else do you see that you'd like to share?
Yeah. So my Temple of Good Enough is also my office where I work 75% of the time, because I have a 75% work from home job. And it is also kind of a catch-all storage room. And so I often think, wouldn't this be nice if I had the time to clean it up and make it look very pretty and have all this extra space and room to move around? And, I have my space clear in front of my Hekate altar, and I have enough space to have my things there and to do the things that I need to do. And that's good enough. I am also like Liz and have a lot of things going on out in the world, and I'm not always able to do my practices at my altar like I would like to. And so it ends up being things like, I recite a little prayer when I make my coffee, or I, do something in the shower to align my, my three selves, or I devote the work that I do, either my paid work or my work for the union or my work in some of my other volunteer capacities, to Hekate and to serve justice. So yeah, I think like sometimes we just have to make the space where we can't always have like you said, we can't always have the insta pretty altars and lives, right? We have messy lives. So and I also think about how, when you're out in nature, right? And I don't want to speak for all witches, but my spiritual practice is so tied to being out in nature. And when you're out in nature, like if you saw some tree, for example, that was free of imperfections and was symmetrical and, just perfect, like you would think there's something wrong with that tree. Right. And so I'm thinking about, how do I reclaim that crooked, crazy, asymmetrical wildness in myself, and how do I embrace that? And I think that's going to be my goal in this coming season, is just reclaiming some of that allowing myself to be a little wild and a little crooked and a little misshapen and beautiful in that way, that messy way. So
with a few
that's kind of where I'm
burls.
at.
I love burls.
Mm-hmm.
I can imagine that
Me
we've all
too.
got our burls on us here and there,
Mm-hmm.
which adds value and beauty, right? Like the burl is an imperfection in terms of, I think, like the tree, like physiology, isn't it?
Mm-hmm.
But
Yeah,
yet
it's like
the
an
burl is the
injury.
most prized part of any tree. So, I mean, there shows you, pay attention to nature, witches. I don't know. For me, what's pinging is like the alder trees and the poplar trees that kind of blanket my property because of where I live. And they're also crooked and funny and misshapen. And I just, like, I effing love those trees. And I think I love your kind of your personal invocation that you want to be more like those trees, like being crooked and a little wild, and maybe your roots trip some other people, but it shows them that they better watch where they're going. I love that. Okay, so you can be a tree.
Yeah.
You have to be a
Yay.
talking tree.
That's my lifelong dream.
Yeah, there's just something that I think we're all sharing that I want to loop back to is just this idea of the temple of good enough, like, is us, right? Like, we are the temple. So if, our office is cluttered, my office is super small, because I took the smallest bedroom in the house for my office and I love it. Liz, like, there's no separation for you between your work, like you're bringing beauty and meaning, whether it's selling thread or magical supplies. And May, you're doing this through your paid work, your work with the union, and your other organizations that you contribute to. And Christen, you're doing this in the most amazing way with baking, like being a pastry chef and putting that kind of magical touch like on all your cakes. I've seen so many pictures of your cakes and I'm like, oh, but she puts like each little croissant feels like an act of devotion. I don't know, does it feel like that sometimes to you when you're
Yeah, 100%. You put love in the food, and this is the thing. Like, I would love to have like this, like booming career, but like I'm content. Like just doing the thing and making the things and bringing a little bit of joy to somebody's day. And I want to add one thing to all of this, like the thing that I'm sitting with, listening to you all talk, and I think that I might carry into this year is like having as much compassion for myself as I do for others, especially when I make mistakes.
That's so true. In the temple of good enough, we own our mistakes. We apologize when it's required, when we goof up, because everybody goofs up. And we learn from them. And we also like give mercy to people who aren't perfect. Even sometimes when they befuddle us or they hurt us, but it's also in the temple of good enough, boundaries are important. So, there's a lot to abiding here. One thing I want people to really be kind of aware of is that we're not advocating for being a slacker witch. Like, there's a difference between saying this is what I'm capable of doing. I am realistic that I am a magical being, and even so, I have limits in the mundane realm. And this one is time, the other is often resources. It's not about being a slacker and saying like good enough doesn't mean like you slap a sticker on a candle and you say good enough, and then you go back to playing. I don't know, what are you playing? Do people still play like Tetris? I don't know, whatever it is people play on. I don't know.
Honey, what are you doing?
I play Tetris, Liz.
Do you understand what I'm trying to say, Liz? Help me out, Liz.
No, I think that I totally get what you're saying, and like for me, it's kind of walking the tightrope of pushing myself and challenging myself without being unnecessarily cruel to myself. You know what I mean? Like, circling back to what Christen said, I think like a really revolutionary act is requiring that you treat yourself the way your best friend would want you to be treated.
Oh, that's so good.
Right? Like, think about the person who really cares about you the most, and how would they ask that you treat yourself, and then do that thing. Like, it's kind of like, I think it's revolutionary. Like, it will change your whole brain. but I think at the same time, your best friend would also want you to push yourself, right? They
Right.
would want you to try. They would want you to like accept your capacity, but also acknowledge that you are capable of trying harder, maybe, or doing something different, or seeing if you can stretch yourself. Like there's such a realm of difference between I'm not going to kill myself for this and that's fine. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like
Playing Tetris.
there's nothing wrong with playing Tetris. You know that I enjoy my action RPGs. So I am not going to tell people not to play video games because
Well, I
I would
used
be
to
a
play
hypocrite.
Tetris on the Nintendo when I was pregnant, like 30 years ago.
Mhm.
I was thinking,
I love Tetris.
I love Tetris. Hail Tetris.
Yeah, Tetris. But I struggle with moving a character in 3D space, so that's why I don't play RPGs. I wish I could.
Oh, you have that too? Because
I do,
I'm
yeah.
like, that's weird.
Yeah.
I don't know.
is.
It looks weird to me.
I
I
struggle.
can't do the first person stuff. Like first person stuff, like for some reason it breaks my eyeballs. So
Yeah.
I have to
Because
be
you
third
already
person.
are first person.
Yeah, there's something about like the visual field, like you aren't
Yeah.
seeing enough or something. Okay,
Yeah,
so now
I
this
get
has
that.
devolved into a video game podcast. We apologize, witches. Not everybody's into video games, but some of us really are. So
You're in the Temple of Good Enough. You do
we are
your
also whole
devotion,
people.
you do your spells, and we also have a gaming room where I am playing Tetris
That's right.
when I'm not busy being headmistress and high priestess and all the other things I do.
But I think thinking about yourself, like thinking of yourself as the temple, also allows you to say like all of these things are can be sacred, right?
Right.
Like the making of the coffee can be sacred, the packaging of an order can be sacred, the making of a croissant can be sacred, the playing of Tetris can be sacred. Like all of these things can be magical if we just choose to frame them that way in our minds. Like
Right,
a lot of things about witchcraft are a choice, right? Like a choice of how you think about things. It's so yeah, I think that's the thing I like to put out into the world. Like everything can be magical if you choose to have it be magical.
right. The world is
It's an
already
active choice.
enchanted. It's up to us to connect with that enchantment. I mean, that's how I
Right.
see the world. And we were having this conversation earlier today that really touched me. It wasn't just us, it was all of the Mistai group. And we were talking about the times that we felt that Hekate like compelled us, or almost like we were forced by something greater than us to give up something, to release something we really didn't want to let go of. And I thought that conversation was so powerful. And I mean, we'll be talking about that more, I think, in the New Moon Salon that's coming up. So if you're in Kobina, we'll be talking about that more. But for me, this kind of valuing what we need to let go of and valuing our diversity and who we are, like in seeing ourselves as the temple, I think is so important. And that, of course, often includes like our uniqueness and celebrating our uniqueness. At the same time, of realizing, like here in the Temple of Good Enough, chances are someone else is very much like you in our temple, right? That we are, I don't even know what the right word is. We are not like, we don't strive for mediocrity. How's that? Even in our very existence, we tend to be like liminal beings, right? Like outside of like narrow restrictive parameters that would be more the societal norms. And May, you used a term that I thought I'd never heard it before. You said that you were neurospicy.
Yeah.
And I really feel so that's neuro, like neurological, spicy as in full of flavor and tasty. And I'd never heard it before, but I think in the Temple of Good Enough, we're all at least a little neurospicy. Do you want to talk a little bit about more what that means to you?
Yeah. So, I have my diagnoses, right? But like, I like using that term because it doesn't sound so clinical. It doesn't, but I have like these little quirks with my brain that's like, oh, if I put something away, then it ceases to exist. Like I did not ever get that object permanence thing that toddlers usually acquire at some point. Like I don't have that. I feel like so hence the clutter in the office. But yeah, and so that's kind of where I brought it up in the conversation today was I was talking about this lovely tincture that I made and then I put in the dark space to cure. And then I kind of forget that it exists until I go into that cupboard for something else. And then I'm like, oh, there's that tincture. I should take some of that. And then somebody else had brought up that plant that I made the tincture out of. And that's what made me remember that. I mean, I had completely forgotten it existed until this person said, oh, I love this plant. And I'm like, I have a tincture made from that plant that I made like 2 years ago. That's like sitting in the corner of a cupboard somewhere, like, so yeah.
I think that's such a temple of good enough moment,
Mhm.
though, because for me, and then I stumbled into the conversation and I was like, oh, is it that? Or did the potion just not want you to see it? Because there's always that element of mystery and,
Mhm.
what is deeper and more magical. So it's like, yes, object permanence may be slippery for you, but that seems very like mystical and witchy because of course the thing is not the thing.
It just pops in when I need it, like you
Yes.
said.
It's not the thing. I don't know. So yes, so we've talked a little bit about what we value here in our personal temple of good enough and also in Covina, which is our coven temple. I hope we've inspired you to maybe see yourself a little bit differently and join us, at least in spirit, in the temple of good enough. We talked about how we bring the temple of good enough to our paid employment, to our personal practices, what is really key for us going forward in the temple of good enough, what we might want to nourish. May is going to be a tree. Hopefully we can get a voice coach to help us understand if we don't understand tree. I don't know. I might be moss, but I think Liz would take moss from me because Liz loves moss.
I do love moss. Well, I love moss because moss grows on stones, and we all know I love stones. So
See, and I love it because it grows on trees, so
That's right.
and
it's so
stones.
multifaceted.
It
And I
is.
love it because it's really old.
Mm-hmm.
Scorpio rising.
All
And
right,
it's
Christen, why do
everywhere.
you love moss? Because apparently we all must love moss today.
Yes, Christen, tell us why you love moss.
Moss is like primordial.
It is.
Moss is ancient.
See, this is how conversations go in the temple of good enough. We start.
We
We're
take a
reading
detour
the
to video
witch's prayer.
games. We end up
Yeah, that's right. And we
moss.
end up with moss, which to me is like the ancient mother connector. I don't know. I just love moss. So I hope you've been a little bit inspired and I hope you'll keep coming back for new episodes. We're going to be doing things in kind of an order for the next several months. If you've been around the pod for a while, Angela Natividad and I actually did a series on different titles of Hekate and different goddesses linked to those titles. We did that series in 2022, and then we stopped doing that series. So we're going back to that series and exploring more of these titles of Hekate and goddesses that are also associated with that title of Hekate. So that's what we'll be doing. If you have the Entering Hecate's Cave book, Angela and I roughly covered most of the first half of the book up to the chapter entitled Chthoniya, which means basically she of the earth or underworld goddess. So we're picking it up from Chthoniya. We have some episodes already recorded. I think I did Chthoniya by myself, didn't I? I think I did. I remember that. I did it by myself. And then we've got one on Hekate. We've got and so that's part of a series that we did. We've got 6 episodes, I believe, on Hekate, Persephone, and Demeter, exploring the titles of Chthoniya, Lampadios, and Babora. So that's what you'll be getting in the coming weeks, as well, of course, as meditations and more. We're also going to dive into Hecate's connection with Artemis and Selene that maps onto the chapters in the cave book entitled Scotia, Paonios, and Psychopomp. And then we're going to be finishing up in the spring with the final chapters in that book and revisiting the first chapter, which is Anima Mundi. So we've got, I wanted us to do really an homage to the Entering Hecate's Cave chapter titles, because those epithets are so evocative. And I know I know Baboroforba is one that lights up for all of us, which means the filth eater. And you know, you'll see some that you're familiar with, like Lampadios, the torchbearer, but also Baboroforba, which you may never have heard before. So we'll be exploring those, doing episodes on those every month, probably coming every 2 weeks or so with some goodies thrown in between. As always, if you have a question you'd like us to dive into, you can send an email to info@keepingherkeys.com. If you want to send me a voice memo, I love that even more than just a regular email. And if you are called to join us in Covina, you can go to the covinainstitute.com/members and figure out what method of joining might be right for you. We've got a great Samhain season that we're launching kind of in conjunction with starting the new season of the pod. We're doing the evocation for Hekate, suitable for any rite, live in a ritual tomorrow during eclipse season. I like to start things during eclipse season. Like if it can't be a Scorpio something, I'll take an eclipse. It's just, I'm a lunar gal. What can I say? I need it darker. Hail Leonard Cohen. So yeah, so check us out. And as always, you can go to keepingherkeys.com to find absolutely everything. Thanks so much for spending this time with us in the Temple of Good Enough. And hail Hekate.